Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inky Thoughts podcast. Today we are continuing for the first time. It feels weird to say, but we are continuing with the second episode of Beyond the Gate, the little continuous series I want to have here on the podcast. We are also continuing celebrating Black History Month in the US. I'm not sure if it's the same month everywhere in the world, but I'm happy to follow along with the American cousins here. And to continue the celebration, I've invited on quite the charismatic fellow, a guy that often looks as glamorous as a lot of his artwork does on and off the skin. A fellow beard brother, even though mine is shaved very short nowadays because of an unfortunate accident that happened a couple of months ago. But without further ado, actually, I think the best way to introduce this guy is to let him handle the job himself, because there's a lot about this person that's quite awesome and interesting to know. So, Oba, if you would please introduce yourself a bit.
Hi, my name is Oba Jackson. I'm the owner of Push Tattoo Studios in Wilmington, Delaware. And we are a Black-owned, LGBTQ-owned tattoo studio, the only one of our kind in our area.
Damn, that's already putting pressure on, Oh, it's almost nice when you think about it sometimes. Sometimes it's fun to be the one of the kind.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. Like, not even a little bit. There used to only be two shops in our downtown area. Now there's only one. Mine.
Oh, Oba's already making me laugh enough that my cough is acting up. I do apologize to people who still have a bit of a cough. But yeah, I mean, the glee you said that with was already so charismatic in a way, like. But I get that. But it's also kind of a testament that the one that I don't know what the other studio was like. That's impossible for me to know. But it's a testament still to your skill at running your studio, that it's still there, and it's quite different from a lot of, well, for lack of a better term, and to not beat around the bush, traditional studios, one could
That
say.
is that would be the exact word for the studios here. Like, very traditional, very white male driven.
Okay.
There is another Black-owned shop, but that was my mentor, so the person who taught me.
Oh,
Yeah, his is maybe 20 minutes from mine. But yeah, it's very little Black-owned shops here. It's like I probably could think of only like 3 or 4 in our whole state.
well, that's baffling, to be honest. I mean, because I can only speak from where I'm from, a small country in North Europe, and that would make sense because the gatekeeping is worse here, I would argue. You do get people that aren't white tattooing, but that would mainly be the bigger cities, and I would say I yet to see a non-white owned studio.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll happen at one point. I think we may have some that are Middle Eastern owned. I can think of
Okay.
one possibly, which is, that's great. But it's already a bad sign when you're struggling to think of,
But you also got, but
examples.
I like to keep things in context too. Like, our
Yeah.
Black population here is so high, so it makes
Oh,
a little bit more
absolutely.
sense. I can't even imagine. I think the last time I looked up a European country, it was like Germany, and their percentage of Black people was like 1%.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that there is that as well. That there is a way smaller percentage that are not Caucasian around here. So of course you do need to take that into consideration as well. But there is no small part of minority people that want tattoos here still. Like there's still. I mean, when you talk to them, there's also plenty of them, especially when you are in the capital like I am, like Copenhagen here in Denmark. There'll be loads of them as well that want tattoos.
Yeah, but I guess they don't like. It is hard, especially like I remember going to go get my first tattoo, and it was in an all white male shop, and I went in there. I was so uncomfortable. It was like skulls and crossbones everywhere. Everything was like black, dripping wax, cobwebby, like not on purpose
Mm.
cobwebs, like cobweb from them not dusting very well. And I went in there, scream metal, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is what I like. Can I just come and relax? I'm already going to be in pain. Why would I want to be in here listening to the scream metal while you guys absolutely ignore me, put your headphones in, and then tattoo me, and then just send me home with barely an instruction? And I wanted to make sure that nobody who would look like me or who was like me had to go through that experience, because it's a little dreadful. And then you got to carry it around with you because your tattoo, the memory of your tattoos never go away. And you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
got this one when I was listening to scream metal for 3 hours.
I mean, that is I mean, I like metal a little bit, but I still would like, to chill a bit. Like I like being asked, "Are you
I
okay
mean,
with this music?"
that would be nice. Or if it just was at a normal volume, would have been fine too. I don't care about the scream
That
metal. It
too.
was
That
loud.
too.
Yeah, it was loud. Like you felt uncomfortable having to ask for anything because it was so loud.
That's funny. Like we sort of have a bit of an experience in common there because when I was first started out getting to my first tattoo at 18, I was also, I was a nerd and I was very scared of asking, like, hey, like you just didn't want to. Some of these people
Bother.
looked very much like they would eat me for breakfast, and even though it was a woman tattooing me the first time, she very much did not care for me at all the first couple of times. Holy shit, man. I would never have dared ask anything like that. And then, you learn later on, especially as I did research as a sociologist and became, I mean, I loved tattoos way before I started getting them. But you just learn, certain red flags. And nowadays, I would never go into a studio where the volume is so loud you can't talk. Like, that's just like, you're not interested in talking to the clients there.
Or
Sorry if that's controversial to anybody listening, but if your music is so loud in the studio that you can't talk to people, you're not interested in your clients.
you're not
It's
interested in your clients. And I say the same thing about tattooers who put on headphones when they're tattooing. How can you hear if your machine is doing anything if you have headphones
oh,
on? How can
I'm
you
more
hear?
worried
How can
about
you hear if
that.
your client's in pain?
I mean, the
Like
thing is,
you can't.
I do get it from some perspective, and I've had some tattooers that are like, "Hey, I'm having a shit day. Can I put on headphones?" There, I'm like, "Okay, cool." If they ask me, and all that stuff. But I do get your point as well. That there is the attention, sort of,
And it's also like it's a separation from your client. You were there to give them a tattoo and to give them a service. That tattoo comes along with a service. I don't understand why people would think that I could treat you bad. I want your money and I'm going to put something on your body permanently. It makes no sense in my head. Like you said, like the girl didn't care for you. How did like? Why was that even a thing? You came to get a service.
oh, it was,
Waiters act like they're your best friends. I want that same energy.
oh, mate, there was Oh, it was an experience the first time. She was an old school, like back in the biker gang days, tattooer. She was already, well into that point. And to her, I think at the first I was just this young, skinny, nerdy guy coming in wanting a tattoo. And she got the drawing my brother had made. And she just like widened the eye of the yang in it. And that was all she did. And then she just threw it on my
Just
chest and tattooed me.
and there you go.
Yeah, that was very much, the old school kind of like, all right, flash off the wall or drawing. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, my mentor came from a white biker gang shop. He is a
Oh,
tall, dark skinned, bearded black man. Me and him look very similar.
oh.
And he was telling me how he had to tattoo swastikas on people. He had to tattoo Confederate
No, I
flags.
spoke
He
with
had
Melvin
to
about that. Like, he at least avoided, hate symbols when Melvin came up, and he talked about he was quite lucky with the studio he got to apprentice in that, but it was mostly white one. But he still talked about how that certain things, like for example, the Confederate flag, he just had to deal with that was just around there in the southern state, and that was just not the. But he at least avoided, having to tattoo that sort of stuff on people. But oh my
yeah.
god, man, I can't.
But like my mentor was the only black one in our state for like 10 years. So he had to deal
Jeez.
with a whole lot. He had to deal with a whole lot of things that I didn't have to deal with.
I mean, I can imagine, but even so, like, and we're sort of touching upon the topic now, even though it might be a bit deep and a bit. I appreciate it's a bit sensitive. You must still have had quite the hurdles to jump over when you wanted to get into tattooing, because not only are you, and I don't know how you might have been at the time, but currently, at least as I view you, you're both very proudly African American and very proudly queer, and I think it's a beautiful thing that you're so proud of it, and that there's no hiding anything, any part of who you are. But how did that
Uh,
work out when you started out?
well, when I started out tattooing late. I started my apprenticeship and I was 31. So I had
Wow.
already knew at that time who I was, like, and who I was going to grow into or what I wanted to grow into. So when I first started tattooing, I literally wanted to, like, my mentor had been asking me for 8 years. So I didn't run into any really gatekeeping because I
Oh,
was
that's
also taught
good.
by a black person. But he had already knew what quality of artist I was because I was getting tattooed at his studio already. So he had seen my artwork and all that. And he was like, "You should definitely start tattooing. You should definitely start tattooing." And then I started getting tattooed by him. And he asked me one time after I had a shitty day at work, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it." So I didn't run into anything with my gayness or with my queerness. I mean, with my blackness, but I do know that other tattoo artists have,
Yeah.
and I feel like since I had such luck with my apprenticeship, I wanted to make sure I spread that out as much as possible because the opportunity that he gave me was like 1 in a million. So I'm gonna make sure that the opportunity that I give people maybe like 8 in a million because I just want to make sure they have an opportunity to have a voice also. So I feel like this lucky thing happened to me. I should pass it along to everybody.
I think that's awesome. I think it's a beautiful thing that you can pay it forward and sort of make sure that there's positive change in the industry in this way.
Yeah.
Because tattooing's, I mean, I can't say it enough, at least that's my belief, it's for everyone. And I hate when some people start talking about, oh yeah, but we know that for example, some anthropologists have talked about, and it's in good faith anthropologists do this, and they're just putting the data out there. But they're like, oh yeah, the reason that they made it scarified in the African continent in ancient times is because inks didn't show up in dark melanated skin back then. But I'm like, yeah, but now we have ink that does. So there's no excuse to be like, oh no, it just doesn't work. Like some people
Well,
will
I
be
just
like
think
that
that's
still,
I just think like when people say things like that is kind of bullshit because tattooing originated in in
Yeah.
African countries. So when they say that something isn't dark enough, I'll be like, but it's not dark enough for you. The contrast is not there for you. Make sure you put that for you underneath of it because like I'm fine with my low contrast tattoos, but like look how much this shows up on like this is tattoo, this is me. So I don't understand that. And I'm a very dark skinned man. But there are people who have different undertones than I do too, and I understand it. And I've even ran into clients who wanted to get portraits who have bluer undertones, and I explained to them like, listen, your contrast is not going to look like this. If you are still comfortable with getting it, I'll still do it on you, and I'm going to do it to the highest of quality that I can. But I'm not going to tell you no because something that I can't see, like that I'm not comfortable with. It's ridiculous.
I'm so happy meeting an artist finally that, or not finally, I think others agree with it without thinking about it, but that agrees with this point I've made many a times that some artists sometimes forget the client's part in whether it was a good tattoo. Because I get the pride as an artist that you look at the craftsmanship and you can feel like, fuck, I didn't do that line. Okay, I didn't do this shit. I could have saturated that color more. But the thing is, the client also has a say. Like if they love that tattoo, that's fantastic. Then it's a good tattoo.
It's a good tattoo.
To some extent. At least to some extent, for their perspective, it's a great
if
tattoo then.
If they're happy with it, I'm happy with it. I've seen tattoos on people that I literally be like,
yeah.
And they'd be like, I love it. Be like, oh my God, me too.
Like, I'll always respect the love people have for tattoos, but there are sometimes when you meet people where it's like, I'm really happy for you that you love that. Yeah. Yeah. Like
like I'll be seeing some of these things like I can instantly tell when I see a tattoo on a black person, if a white person did it, I can instantly tell usually.
Oh right.
Oh yeah, they love to cut us open, like to overwork our skin because they think that the black is going to get blacker, so they'll keep on working it, or they'll put their machine up because they're like, oh, I need to see the contrast. No, you're not making more contrast. You're cutting me open. I don't do anything different on brown skin that I do on white skin.
Nothing. I think there's a lack of education, really, in this area. Like there's a gap here that isn't being bridged really by a lot of people. Where I think it's sadly a lack of interest for a lot of white artists in learning other skin types sometimes.
Yeah, they don't have to. Why would you have to when the people who are going to support you are going to be white 9 times out of 10? Usually tattoo clients look like artists. But I always say things like, well, if they can't tattoo white skin, it don't really matter to them because that's not where their money is coming from anyway. And they don't care to they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to make that much more money tattooing black people, so why would I even care about doing it? That's the mentality that a lot of people have here. We have studios that literally the whole studio only do realistic black and gray. Every single person in there does the same thing. Every single person in there is white. Every single one of their clients is white. So why would they need to learn anything when they're going to always have support? That's how I look at it in this industry. But the thing that I also want people to understand is that there are black tattooers who can do what these white tattooers can do also. So would you rather you support someone who can do the same quality work and not spread disgusting behavior around or go to somebody who's just going to continue to keep the same disgusting behavior, only teaching other white men how to tattoo and objectifying women who do tattoo.
I would say women are often quite better at propagating more diversity within the industry, I would argue. Like, but I think that it also comes with the territory that they felt it themselves, like a lot, especially if we go back, fucking even just the early 2000s. There was,
Listen,
whew.
like I know women who literally have finished apprenticeships within the last 5 years and who are still getting like sexually assaulted, sexually abused at their apprenticeships. In this, like literally in the 2010s and 20s. So it's like you know these things, and it's just wild to even think about it, because you're like, so still a woman has to go through this when we do a job that was built on us being nerdy art kids.
It is strange, like this whole thing with people wanting to keep the old culture but not realizing the bad stuff of it.
Yeah, and
Like
it's interesting because after like being in this industry for the last 8 years, I've got to work around every different. I feel like every different diverse race. I think only only race that I haven't seen, like interacted with was a Middle Eastern tattoo artist. I can't think of like a Southern Asian. I can't think of anybody that I met in the tattoo industry in 8 years, which is very strange to me. So
I think that's more common here and in the UK. I've at least met a couple in the UK that are Southeast Asian.
Yeah, I've never met any Southeast Asian tattooers, but what I will say is that there are particular people that are marginalized in the tattoo community who want to keep it marginalized, so they'll be the only one. I remember working with a girl like a couple of years ago. I think like 3 years into my career, we ended up working together, and I heard her repeating the same thing that these toxic male tattooers were saying, and I'm like, "But girl, they was talking about you too, right? Like this wasn't just a thing to keep out like posers and all this stuff. They were trying to keep out anybody brown, anybody female, anybody who queer, who was different than them, which you are. So when you repeat those things, you just sound like an idiot, one. But then two, you were just doing the same thing that they did to other people. And this person was a lesbian too, which was really wild to me.
Jeez, that is.
She's like repeating this like shit that these guys say. Like, bro, what? Get out of here with that shit.
That's not just goalkeeping for the opposite team. That's breaking your own leg, man. Jeez.
It's gonna be. We like to call it being a pick me.
Yeah.
That's what she was doing. Like, I'm always aware of pick me's. I always be like, Candace Owens, is that you? I see you.
Sorry. The laughing makes me cough right. I'm sorry. That was fucking funny. But I mean, I get it in situations like mine where you want to be, you want to invite voices in to talk, that you want to be a bit pick me. But in most cases, you also want to have some realism. You also want to be somewhat authentic to yourself and try to, I think there's a lack of bigger picture sometimes for a lot of these people.
Oh yeah. It is a lack of a bigger picture, but it's that me-centric attitude. It only is important when it affects me. It only is this when it affects me. Like, you can meet people who are full racist, and the next thing you know, their daughter has a half black child, and now they're just obsessed, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what I was being a racist for." Yeah, because you never thought that you would get to the point where you would have a black relative. That's why you were still a racist. But now that you have a black relative and you see that black people are just like you're like, "Oh wow, well look at those walking, talking humans that just happen to be a different color than me."
It's baffling. I mean, better late than never, but still, it should happen sooner, way sooner.
Yeah, like
it shouldn't take that. It shouldn't take that much.
Yeah, and that shit is definitely like, it's one of those things that is taught at home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I can stand by that 100% as a sociologist. There's no form of hate or prejudice that comes out the womb. No matter, you can have a neo-Nazi give birth to a baby. There's nothing. No belief from that ideology that just automatically passes down to that child.
Yeah.
It's taught. It's always taught.
It's always taught.
There's absolutely absolutely a nurture rather than nature thing. This sort of stuff.
But like, can we just stop the fucking nurturing of hate? Like, it's so
wild. I agree.
It's so wild. Just treat people like you treated. That's all what my mom always taught me. And it's like
But I've
the
always also
easiest thing.
tried to say to tattoo artists when they question me on this and why I'm so open-minded sometimes, which has happened like a few times in Scandinavia at conventions, that which is always like, but the thing is, you keep talking about, oh, we'll miss clients and stuff like that, but I don't think that'll happen, because if somebody new comes along, they have a client, they bring a new clientele to their stuff. They're not going to take your clientele.
Oh,
That's the thing.
listen,
Like, there's
in
enough
tattoo,
clients for everybody. Because, for
in
example, with
tattoo,
your studio, you create a safe space for a whole new, for a group of people that if it had stayed like it was in the 90s, they may have wanted tattoos, they would never go get them. Never go get them. So few of them would. So when a tattoo space opens where they feel welcome and respected, they're gonna go there. That doesn't take away the clients the other studios have. That just opens up a new place for other people to go and get tattooed.
yeah. And then they don't think about it like this too. Like we don't all do the same style, so
No.
it doesn't really matter. Like we have clients that we all in my studio share clients. Like their client be like, oh, I'm gonna get something from Oba, I'm gonna get something from Zeke, I'm gonna get something from Anna. Like they'll go to each one of us and get something because they want something different. They're collecting. But then they also may
Nice.
go to another tattoo shop after coming to mine first because they're like, oh, I like the way that this person does something, and that's why I don't get why you wouldn't want to welcome as many people as you could and being a gatekeeper. Because like I can tell you, I watch tattooers in my area put up things that say, "Oh, you need me, I don't need you. Don't do this to me." Like literally reprimanding their clients, telling their clients like, "You dress like you're poor. I wear this." And then I see now that we're in a hard time of tattooing, I see all the support, all the marketing, all the fundraisers, all the things happening. I'm like, but if you had just had the same customer service, you may not have to do this much of this because you wouldn't have scared so many people away. Because being a
Absolutely.
dickhead, I'm gonna tell everybody you're a dickhead. I'm gonna tell a few people how lovely you are.
I
But
love
I'm
the
like,
energy over
I'm
how
not
you.
like I'm never gonna be like, oh, so and so is so nice all the time. But when we're talking about an asshole, I'm gonna bring you up. I'm gonna be like, that person's an asshole. I'm gonna tell everybody you're an
That
asshole.
just sounds better in your dialect than mine. Like, I have to admit that. But yeah, I mean, I fully agree. This is also the weird thing that some people don't realize that it's a corporation. It's always, you need a client as much as they need you. Like, it's you're working
It is a
together.
collaboration.
Even if it's like, even if it's people like me who come in with an idea and then give complete free reign, you still need me to come in.
We was just talking about how sometimes we get people that come in and say, do whatever you want. And I'll be like, no, that's not what's gonna happen here. If I do what I want, you're gonna have a black woman on you every time. That's what I want to do every day. That's what I would love to do. Black woman, black woman, black. Like I could think of 4 billion different renditions of a black woman to do on you. And then they go, oh no, I don't want that. I was thinking more of a cactus. I was like, so why wasn't you thinking the cactus when you told me I could do whatever
That's
I want?
fucking funny. Like, that's like that's almost the old bit about the girlfriend and the boyfriend being like, so what do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know, you pick. And then as soon as they pick something, it's like,
It's
no, not
like
there,
that is
not there.
that is literally that's exactly what it is. And I always tell people, just give me a theme.
Yeah.
Give me a theme. I just need a little theme. Like if you say this, I'll be like, oh, we can do this. But
Just the tiniest bit of guidance is
just like
welcome,
this,
you know, just
but I feel like when you
oh
say do
man.
whatever you want, it makes me feel like I'm working in a space this big. But if you give me some kind of theme, it's the world.
I think it's like being the bull in the china shop. Because I mean, I'm not a tattooer myself and I haven't tried it, but what I imagine of this from talking to people is very much like, oh, I really want to do this, but they might not like it. And that's how you feel
Yeah.
about every single idea you come up with, because they've just said,
Yes.
oh, whatever you want. I just like your style, whatever you want. It's always good. Like, even as little as I did with this vampire lady, I just went into to my mate's studio, a brilliant woman named Kaya, who works in Scotland, and said, hey, I want a vampire lady in your style. And the only other thing I want to tell you is I like brunettes.
That's it.
And that's it. And even that's
That's it.
enough, you know. But if I just walked in and said, Kaya, give me a tattoo, she would be like, all right, here's a bird. Because she likes doing birds.
I like to do birds. So here go a bird. Like that's what I always think of. And when people do it, I go, okay. And then I say it to them and they be like, oh, maybe not. Or I'll be really dramatic when they say whatever you can do. And I'll try to like gauge the person and see what they would not be into. And I'm like, what about a skull on fire? And they're like, oh no, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. Like,
Just rolling the
yeah,
whole
I bet you
spectrum.
are. I bet you are.
Oh man, that's fucking funny. I love that. That I don't know. The skull on fire reminded me. This is digressing a bit, but reminds me of one time I was hanging out in a guy. A guy used to me used to have a studio here in Copenhagen, and I was hanging out in that studio, and this young 18-year-old white guy came in, tracksuit bottoms, tank top, already a good start. Came in and said, "Hey, I want a sleeve full of skulls." And the funny thing is, my mate's, the guy's friend was working the desk at the time. He was waiting for another client, and he's a big guy, and he looks a bit more old school in that way. And he just landed over the desk and said, "Listen, mate, you do realize that this sleeve is not going to make you the new Al Capone. I would perhaps start out trying being tattooed before you come in here, 18 years old gung ho, and want a skull sleeve."
They are. It's always the 18-year-olds, and then you tell them how much it's going to cost, and then they be like, "Well, what about a small one right here on my wrist?" And I'll be like, "Oh, okay, that seems more like it. Like that seemed like more of what was actually going to happen." Or these I hate it's really hard. That's why I always try to make sure that I'm talking about art and giving Black and brown people access to art, because we don't have the same opportunities. We weren't brought up with the same opportunities or the same values of finding art as important. Luckily, I'm a third generation artist, so I had the opportunity to be brought up around art, for my mom to take us to museums, for my mom to take us to do all the free things you can take kids to do because we grew up marginalized. And I just lucked up and had the opportunity to have access to art. So I try to explain to people when they come in for sleeves and things and they have poor ideas. I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna give you some homework. I'm gonna tell you to go look at this, because it feels like you really wouldn't want this whole sleeve of clouds. So maybe if you go do a little bit of research, I point them in the right direction of things that they can look at and learn about before you come get in the sleeve, because you don't realize how many visual things there are out there if you look up tattoo sleeve. But if you look up artwork, you will find so many different things that you may not even have known you liked. Like you'd be like, "Oh wow, this is amazing," and it's just a circle on a red circle on a white canvas. But somebody thought of this and did it so perfectly that it made me feel something. And it's the same thing that tattoos can do.
Yeah.
But we don't have access to art as Black and brown people as much as everybody else. So that's pretty much what my whole thing is now. And especially I'm at 8 years tattooing this month, and my whole new thing is educating people about artwork. Because at the end of the day, I'm an artist as a tattoo artist. I create, I make things, I do all kind of weird shit. Anything with my hands I like to do. So I'd like to give people the opportunity to understand this could be worked into a tattoo. I'm trying to see if the camera will go up there. No, this could be worked into a tattoo. We just need to change a couple things, but that's why you work with a tattoo artist. But start somewhere that's not tattoo.
Yeah, I would argue as well. You got to figure out what style you like and what sort of things turn you on, so to speak, and all that stuff. And then that's always the advice I give people. That they say, "Oh, I really want a tattoo," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." But absolute first thing I want to tell you is figure out what style you like. Then there's so many different tattoo styles, and then find an artist you really like. Don't think about the money just yet. Find an artist you really like, and then go from there.
And then go from there. That's literally all you have to do. And if you trust it, I tell people to go to somebody who's an artist. Don't go to somebody who just photoshops things together and then they make a sleeve. If you're looking for a realism sleeve, you go to that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're looking for a person that does that, go to that person. But if you're looking for somebody who's going to create you an art piece, go to an artist with a particular voice. Find somebody whose voice sounds like what you want to hear. Because that's literally what I do. I try to make sure I tell everybody, within a certain context, this is what my tattoos are all going to look like.
I mean, speaking of that, that's one of the things that drew me to following you years ago when I first started following your profile. And it baffles me to know that you might have only been tattooed for 4 years at that time, which is incredible work already then, and it's even more incredible now. But I always loved how you mixed in these incredible streaks of both African-American culture and, correct me if the term is wrong, but Nubian sort of African culture as well, Egyptian stuff, mythology and all that, and then sort of these pop culture elements almost now and then. It's quite incredible, to be honest.
So I call what I do Black Americana. I try not to focus on the Afro part because I'm a Black American, and when we were brought over to this country, we built our own culture from ground up. We had no knowledge about what was. We didn't find out what Africa was until later on. Some people knew where we were from, but they didn't know any of the culture or anything. And then we learned that through education. So I like to focus on Blackness, so my Black American culture, and then where it intersects with my African American culture,
Oh, okay.
like parts of Africa, parts of America, all the diaspora. I like to use to mix in, and then pop culture references that also refer back to those things, like I'll put bamboos or like bamboo earrings or something, because that's how we carried like our wealth. We didn't know that in the 80s, but that's pretty much what it was showing our wealth. And it's the same thing in like Zambia with the giant Fulani earrings and things like that. Are just things that showing like, oh, look, she got this big giant gold earring. So if her husband leaves her, she can take care of her family with this. And she walk around with them every day because they're her treasures. So I try to keep those same ideas playing in my head when I do everything that I do, like all my tattoos.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty fucking cool. Like, there's almost a history lesson in the tattoos, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a history lesson, and people don't know so much of our history. So I feel lucky when people get to come to me, especially when they have this narrow idea of what like black. I don't like to say black excellence, but like what black quality can be. Um, they don't have like an idea of what it is, and I'm like, yo, so you know that like we existed outside of Egypt, and then we did a whole lot of other great things outside of Egypt.
Yep.
And we're just going to continue focusing on these things and not this small little section of what white American history has taught you. Yeah. We have other great empires. We have other great things. We have built so many things.
I mean, even within the States, there's a lot of black cultural history that's sort of glossed over, where you've done quite amazing things, you know.
Ingenuity, things that like the racist practices of the patent office. Like literally, you could just be like, "Oh, this guy Oba invented this, but I'm gonna make a patent for it, and y'all gonna give me one, and then I'm gonna profit off of something that I didn't even invent." But this person doesn't have a voice here, so it's okay.
Yes, I mean, it's fine. It's tough to comment on as a white guy, because you want to, you know, there's such guilt you feel, even though I'm not even from the US, because there's so much bullshit that's been done just based on these horrible eugenics like ideas sometimes, so that it's insane and almost incredible in the way what horror we've committed towards other people sometimes.
But you know what I always tell people? So the fact that you said that you feel guilt about that shows the quality of person you are. You don't feel guilt. You feel empathy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm gonna go out and be like, "Oh, my ancestor did this, so now I'm gonna go." But you know, it's okay to recognize the horrors somebody in your ancestry might have done, or somebody within your race has done, and all that.
But it's good that you, as a person, understand that you have empathy, because that is really what the problem is. Like, I can tell you what white American problem is: they have very little empathy for anybody who doesn't have the privilege that they have. Very little to none. That is why you will see people not speak to the owners and speak to their dogs, because they have no empathy. Because the dog don't have no voice. They don't think about
that. Is a very American thing, to be honest. I've never seen that in Scotland or in Denmark or anywhere else I've lived. It's a very American thing you see on YouTube sometimes, where people talk to the dog.
It shows you exactly how Americans treat people. People are the secondary thing, especially if they black or brown. I have a little tiny Yorkie. He is 7 pounds. His name is Rizzo. He is the cutest thing moving. He looks like a stuffed animal. He looks like a stuffed animal that just walks. And people will literally, like, we live in a newly gentrified area. I will have people go, "Oh my God, hi," like, oh, speak to him, and then literally look up at me and then go about their day. Or never acknowledge that I was there, but when they see me without the dog, they wouldn't even make eye contact with me. They would like huddle up a little bit. I'm 6'3" and I'm like 240.
Right, so bragging a bit.
Like, I'm a larger man, so like people are all put by me. Then I'm a large, dark-skinned man with a big giant beard. They'd be like, "Oh my God," and I'd be like, "Nobody care about you over here. Go on about your day. I'm gonna go on about my day. I could give a less fuck about what you got going on. But since I'm so important to you, because they're so scared, but then they won't speak to me. They'll speak to my dog though."
That's weird.
I literally have seen people be attacked in the streets and no one stopped to help them. But if somebody kicked the dog,
that is, I mean, that's a thing, I think, sadly worldwide sometimes, that people's, I mean, I'm all for caring for animals, and I think animals should also, you know, be protected and loved and cared for. But it is wild sometimes that if it's an adult person, nobody's gonna stop and do anything. They're too much in their head, and no, even I'm guilty of that at times. But if it's a kid or if it's an animal, people are immediately gonna.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Yeah, like,
great that
what?
they do that. They should just also do that
Like,
for everybody
no, no,
else, you
no.
know.
I'm not saying there's anything that I'm not saying there's anything wrong that they do, but it just goes to show you the
Yeah,
priority that people have and
yeah.
like caring for other people. They have little to no empathy for other people, and that's why people get so caught up with saying like, "Oh, it was slavery was 100 years ago." I'm like, yeah, but you know, like we still dealing with the institutional racism, though, right? You know that,
Isn't it
like,
technically less than 100 years?
no,
Technically,
it's more than 100 years now.
okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
my American history is at times a bit rusty. I have to
it's
admit.
okay. It's okay. I always like to think about it like this: 100 years was 1923. My grandma was born. My great grandma was born in 1921. She was not a slave, so that's how I
Oh,
remember. That's how I remember how far along it was.
all
But
right.
yeah, it just really goes to show you how like here people say forget about something instead of empathizing about it. They just say, well, why should I feel guilty? You shouldn't feel guilty. You should feel empathy, which is very different. And
I
then
think
you
that's a
should
great
also
way to
help
put it.
break down those walls.
I think that's a really absolutely genius way of putting it. Because I think that's a lot of thing, sadly, that white people wrestle with sometimes, that they feel like, oh, you want me to feel guilty. No, just, empathize with what the
Just
other
empathize.
people's ancestors went through and what they might have gone through in their own life. You don't, if you haven't done anything personally wrong, you
Then
don't need to
don't
feel
feel
guilt, but
bad.
it's okay to empathize with,
It's
with the
okay.
situation.
Yeah.
I
And
think that's
like
a
it is the thing
beautiful
we
way to
teach
put it.
children. Like we all teach children empathy. We just teach them who to use it on.
Mm.
And if you
Well, I
teach
think
kids to
some
use it
people
on people,
sadly don't teach it. I've at least met some youngsters and kids that seem to not know it, but fair enough.
the
I
older
get
they
your point, though.
the older I get, I feel like I do understand that a little bit more. Me and one of my friends was just talking about like she's like, I don't understand what's wrong with these kids. And I'm like, oh, you don't understand what's wrong with these kids? Because like while I'm a man who didn't go to college, I do have common sense. And I know that when something so big like the crack epidemic or the AIDS epidemic happened to only certain communities, it affects those communities in a different way. And if your grandmom was a crackhead and she didn't raise your mom well, how do you expect your mom to raise you well? But then also, how do you expect to raise a child well?
It's at least way more difficult, and there's a way higher chance that, it's gonna be some of these problems gonna get passed down and passed on.
They're going to get passed down and passed down worse each time. Because if you think about the time that we live in, it's so much different than what it was before.
Hmm.
These kids have so many more, like, they can see the world so much easier than I could see the world when I was a kid. But then they also are also stuck in one place because they're seeing the world through this
Hmm.
all the time.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. Sorry, I got caught up in the horror of that for a moment. To turn it a bit back, actually, the whole thing with like giving kids an opportunity and all that stuff and the empathy, that is that sort of also what you do with your studio? Because you talked about some of the younger artists and that as well.
Oh
That work
yeah,
there.
so yeah, I have like newer artists. They're not younger. Some of them are a little bit older. Some of them are a little bit younger. But they are also people who would not have gotten the opportunity to learn tattoo just because of who they are as a person.
Mm.
But this year I'm going to be starting a program called Draw with Oba, and
Oh.
I'm going to be doing it with adults and
Mm.
kids. I want to do them like opposite Sundays. So I have kids sometimes. I'll have adults sometimes. The adult one will be a little bit more like adult, like we'll have nude models and stuff like that. But then the kids will probably be focusing on like still lives and just giving them knowledge of art because
Mm.
I've been recently running into a ton of young artists and a lot of young female artists, and all they have access to is really anime. And I so
I
like
mean,
that's
that's
all they're
great, but
drawing.
yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with anime, but that's all they're drawing. And I'm like, I wonder, do they get to see other things? Like when they go to when they go to museums with their school. I don't know if kids still go to museums with their school or not. I ain't been in school in 22 years, but
I can't speak for America, but they do it here. But there's also a lot more stuff going on from the government, giving schools free access to museums now and then, and
oh, we have free
making.
access. Our students have free access
Okay,
to the
cool.
museums too, but
They just don't go.
they just don't go. But like this, I don't know if the schools still even take them. Like before, it used to be like a bus trip, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if that still happens. I don't have any like school age kids in my family right now that are like, I have like really small or really old. But I don't think that kids are getting the opportunity to see art. So one, working with little young artists to teach them like, you don't have to make people brown if you don't want them to be brown. They can be yellow, they can be orange, they can be tan, they can be pink, they can be whatever color. When somebody told me that, my mind was blown because I was so used to like what I was taught the quality of art was repeating something else identically.
I mean, I think it's sort of it ties back to some of the stuff you talked at the start with, like, especially within the Black community in America. There's some people that don't at all encounter this because it's just not seen as part of it. And Melvin talked about some of the same with his nerdiness. That it's like, oh yeah, but being a young Black man and then also a nerd, it's almost like, oh, that's not a thing you are. You're just not a thing that happens here. So it's good that there are people like you and him that go out and open up this now for new generations and other people that might be in our age group and still, haven't had that opportunity. Because I think there's a lot more people that are like that but keep it in sometimes when that happens.
When I started to do the marketing, I started to do it at the end of last year, and I thought it was a bad idea. So I'm going to move it to the beginning of this year. I was running into a lot of artists who wanted to do it but didn't want to do it with me, and I'm like, why? They're like, oh, but I can't draw in front of somebody who can draw as well as you can. And I said, yes, you can. I have been practicing this. I have been practicing this for more than 35 years.
I mean, it's flattering, but it's also defeating the purpose when they say that. Like, it's very flattering that they like your skills that much, but that's part of it, That's why you can teach.
But I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want to come work with someone who can do this? Because they can help you learn to do something that you want to do.
That would be like if I'd gone up to my supervisor when I did my master's degree and said, oh, no, I don't want to do any academics in front of you. You already have a PhD. Like, I'm not going to be that good. Like,
ew, I can't do that.
I mean, I get why people do that because we can all be shy and ourselves, but it defeats the purpose. The reason you can do that is because you know how to do art, and then you can, help others see if they have a creative spark, and if they have.
I tell people all the time, like, it's just me pouring a little bit of water out my picture into your cup. But eventually, that might be oversimplifying it. That might. But then eventually, your cup will become a picture, and then you can pour some shit back into me or into someone else. Like, just learn, and then grow, and then you can teach.
Oh, you can always learn from your students. Well, I loved doing that when I taught at the University of Glasgow earlier this year when I was trying to do a PhD. Some of the stuff is, even though I read way more than the students do, they're just 18, 19, some of them even just 17, they're undergrads. But some of them still pick up stuff that I would never have thought of. And then you sort of learn from that and you're like, whoa, that's an interesting angle. That's,
Yeah, I work with younger tattooers and they see stuff in a different light and I'd be like, bitch, I never thought about that.
That's awesome. I think that's the best way to be as a mentor in any field, where you could be like, oh, fuck, you actually just figured something out. That's awesome.
Or sometimes they'll have these shortcuts in their head of like shadowing and light. And I'd be like, that lighting makes absolutely no sense here, but yes, like that's you need to do more of that because no one else thought like this. And I need you to expand on this. I need you to, like me, I'm really good at self-reflecting. Like I'll draw something and I'll be like, but you could draw this better than this. And then I'll draw it again. And then I'll draw it again. And then I'll be like, there it is. That's that thing I was trying to get out of there. I was trying to get that more feeling of myself. And I want to teach that to other tattoo artists. My mom always said that, like, my only talent isn't drawing. My talent is just generally development. I'm really good at teaching someone how to do something that they already can do way better than me, shorter or better. I'd be like, but have you ever thought about this? And I love when I ask somebody, have they ever thought about something? And they have. And then we get to have a dialogue about it. Like, those are like the times I have. So
you should record you saying, have you thought about this in that tone, and put it on one of those buttons you can click whenever somebody has like,
have you thought about this?
Just have it at the studio, like, have you thought about this? Somebody comes in and goes like, hey, I want my boyfriend's name on my arm. Have you thought about this?
That's my favorite thing. I'd be like, so when's your boyfriend getting his? He's never going to get it, man.
No, they never do. You do get the couples where they both do it, but I've more often seen that within the tattoo community than of just some stranger walking in and getting a tattoo.
I barely ever have done two people's name, like each person's name on the opposite person. Almost never.
Oh, there's an old joke you would love in an old. It'd be in Danish, so you wouldn't be able to understand it. But there was an old Danish movie from way back before I was born. My dad loved, where this one guy they sort of played on the sailor trope and with tattoos and a girl in every harbor. So his whole back was just full of women's names, and he just kept getting them crossed out whenever he got a new girlfriend.
We had when I first opened my studio, the other guy who worked for me had a man that kept coming in, and he would just bring girls and they get his name on them. I
No.
think I think we got up to like maybe like 7 before we just like was like what the
Jeez.
like
That's
7.
not
It's one
good.
here, it's one here, it's one here, it's one here. I'm
On
like,
the neck as well.
a girl got his name on her neck like this way. And I'm like, child, I'll cover it up.
Yeah, I mean, whew,
I'll cover it up.
see you in 6 months. Like,
Okay. What is there any questions that you didn't ask me that was on the list that you wanted to get to?
no, I mean, we're getting through them. Honestly, like, this is flowing very naturally. I thank you for the concern over, but
Oh no, I gotta go to work in like 15 minutes.
oh shit. Well, honestly, I would love to ask you about what your future vision is for Push Tattoo and how you see for lack of a better term, like the black tattoo culture developing and stuff like that. Like because I've been quite happy to see more and more people of color and Asians and Black Americans get into tattooing nowadays, like across at least the Western world.
I want to see us. So this year, I have a really big plan for us to do a lot more community outreach. We used to
All
do a
right.
lot of community outreach, but like we do never tell anybody about it. I donate to charities. I do a lot of things like just to give back because I did come from a marginalized place. So I always like to make sure that I'm recognizing that someone should be giving to these people, giving to people. And that's what my main focus is on this year. So like having a little bit more events, like doing the drawing thing, doing all those kind of things. I just want to invite people more into our space so they can feel comfortable because I know a lot of
Mm.
people have this idea of when a shop is black or when a shop is gay, that they are going to be dealing with a very particular kind of setting. And I try to break down those ideas because like, no, you're going to enjoy yourself here. You're going to feel very comfortable here. If you're straight, it doesn't matter. No one cares. But also if you're gay here, no one cares. Nothing
That's the
about who
beauty of
you're
it.
no one here cares about who you're sleeping with. We care about what you want to get a tattoo of and how comfortable we can make you feel in this space. When people feel comfortable, they come back. We want you to feel comfortable and come back. We want you to bring a friend. So when we have these events, we'll be having like
Preach.
happy hours and stuff. You'll bring a friend that never been here or never heard about us. And you'll be like, oh my God, I was so comfortable at this place. Maybe I will come here and get a tattoo. My goal is to open the gate and not close the gate. The gatekeeping stuff is so weird. Like right now, we're still dealing with gatekeeping, and piercing is even worse because we can't find anybody who pierce who is not a white straight male anywhere in our state. So we don't have a piercer. We try to do a program where we have
Yes.
one come once a week, but it's really hard because also in the area that we're in, you can probably get a piercing for $10 downstate somewhere, and people will go pay the $10, even though they got to drive 50
Uh,
miles to get there.
Jeez.
Disgusting. But yeah, so my goal is to just to keep our diversity open, our hearts open, making sure that we are just like we are here for our customers. We're not here to be the cool kid and to make you worship us. People get this really weird, bent out of shape idea of that they can create their God, but in all actuality, you're just a creator too, and just make stuff. Don't be a dickhead about it. Make stuff, treat people nice, because if you treat people nice, they will return to you.
I think that's a beautiful sentiment to round it off on, Oba. Absolutely fantastic. Uh, to sign us off, would you please plug yourself, as the kids say? Where can people find you? What have you got
um,
going on? I mean, we have already heard a bit about what's going on, but
My name is Oba Jackson. I am at Push Tattoo Studios in Wilmington, Delaware. My Instagram is at OMOORI. That's Omari. It's my first initial and my middle name. Um, and you can also find me on Push Tattoos Instagram. I think it's just Push Tattoo Studio. I
I
think
think
I'm
so.
horrible at that. I'm
I'll at least
horrible.
put
I'm
it in the
horrible at that.
description. I'll
I'm horrible at
find it
that.
all before it comes out and put it in the description.
But I'll also be doing drawing programs with adults and children. The children will be 11 to 17, and the adults will be 18 to however old they want to be. And I'll be doing this another thing, a YouTube series called The Commission, that we're working on right now where I'm commissioned to do portraits of people, and they come into my studio, we talk about what they want to get, and then I produce a portrait for them. I'm excited to do that one because I want to invite a ton of people to come out. So that'll all be coming this year.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait to see it. And Oba, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I can't thank you enough. And to anybody listening in, oh, sorry, Oba. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. To anybody listening in, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Hello, everyone. What an episode we just had. Rounding off our Black History Month celebration here on Inky Thoughts podcast for the year. It was incredible having Oba on this episode, and before that having Melvin on the previous episode. Two great African-American tattoo artists. And I think from this episode, especially Oba's message about empathy rather than guilt is an incredible thing to take away from this episode and learn from. It's not about, he's not out there to have people feeling guilty for stuff others might have done, but having the empathy to put yourself in the shoes of others and show sympathy towards their situation and the situation of their people is an incredible skill to have, and it's so necessary in this world, and also in a really hard industry like the tattoo industry. Next time I'm going to be talking to Christian, also known as Nuke Milk, a guy that's absolutely doing so many things in the tattoo world, running supply companies, developing all sorts of gear for the tattoo industry. He also runs several studios and a couple of conventions. And we're going to be talking a bit about both running something as niche as a pop culture and anime tattoo conventions, as well as studios in the same kind of ballpark, and what that takes as a guy behind the scenes, but also talking a bit about why these subcultures have developed within the world of tattooing, specifically people that are very into pop culture tattoos, but also especially people that are very into anime tattoos. It's going to be very exciting, very nerdy, but also a very educational episode as always, and I can't wait for you guys to enjoy it.